She confessed to a murder she didn't commit, trading her own freedom for a cold prison cell. This might sound like the plot of a movie, but it's the harrowing story of a mother's ultimate sacrifice, a desperate attempt to hide her daughter's darkest secret. In the chilling silence of a prison, one woman chose to bear the weight of a brutal crime, believing her love could shield her child from the consequences of her own actions. But secrets built on blood have a way of crawling into the light. The truth of what really happened in a small Ohio apartment in the spring of 1999 would eventually tear a family apart, challenge the very foundations of the justice system, and force us all to ask an impossible question: how far is too far to protect the ones you love? This is a story about a lie born from devotion, a truth that was even more horrifying, and the devastating fallout when a mother's love becomes an accessory to murder. Section 1. The world of Lesley and Amanda. To really get the weight of that sacrifice, you have to understand the bond between them. Our story is set in Toledo, Ohio in 1999. For Lesley Barker, a woman in her 40s, life had one unwavering purpose: her daughter, Amanda Sue Barker. At 18, Amanda was technically an adult, but she navigated the world differently. Diagnosed with intellectual disabilities, she depended heavily on her mother. Their relationship wasn't just parent and child, it was a tight-knit partnership built on necessity and a fierce, protective love. Lesley was Amanda's rock. She managed her appointments, helped with daily life, and was the constant, steady presence Amanda needed to feel safe. For Amanda, her mom was her entire world, her advocate, her support system, and her best friend. They lived a quiet, contained life, revolving almost entirely around each other. To an outsider, Lesley might have seemed overprotective, but in her heart, she was just being a mom, building a fortress around her vulnerable child to shield her from a world that wasn't always kind. But as 1999 rolled in, their small world expanded. Amanda had befriended another young woman, 19-year-old Lorden. Kara was bright and full of life, a stark contrast to Amanda's quiet nature. In a move that signaled a push for independence, Amanda and Kara decided to become roommates. For a moment, it seemed like a good thing. Amanda was branching out, making new friends, getting a taste of adulthood. Lesley, though probably worried sick, supported her daughter's choice. But this new friendship, this shared apartment, would soon become the epicenter of a tragedy. The fragile world Lesley had so carefully built for her daughter was about to be shattered by jealousy, rage, and a fight that would spiral into unimaginable violence. Section 2. The crime. Then came that awful day in April 1999 when the walls of that small Toledo apartment witnessed something horrific. The friendship between Amanda and Kara had soured. Tensions simmered for weeks, fueled by a toxic mix of youth, close quarters, and resentment. Investigators would later piece together that the fight was over something tragically common: money and jealousy. Small arguments had festered into pure hatred. That day, the final argument ignited. Lorden, just 19, found herself cornered by Amanda's escalating rage. It wasn't a fair fight. It was an ambush. Armed with a knife, Amanda unleashed a storm of violence on her roommate. It was a frenzied, brutal attack. Kara was stabbed more than 20 times and beaten. The sheer savagery of the assault spoke to a deep, consuming anger that had finally boiled over. The crime scene was a bloody, chaotic testament to the violence that had taken place. In the moments after, as Kara lay dying, a decision was made. Lesley Barker, the ever-present mother, was at the apartment. It's unclear if she arrived during or immediately after the attack, but what she found was undeniable. A scene of pure carnage, her daughter standing in the middle of it all, and her daughter's friend murdered. In that instant, instinct took over. The fortress Lesley had spent a lifetime building around Amanda went into overdrive. Faced with the unthinkable, that her daughter was a killer, Lesley made a choice. She would not let Amanda's life end in prison. She would take her place. The plan was as desperate as it was simple. Lesley Barker would confess to the murder of Kara Lorden. Section 3. The investigation. When the first responders pushed through the door of the apartment, they walked into a scene of pure horror. Kara Lorden was gone, and the apartment was a wreck of overturned furniture and bloodstains that told a story of a brutal struggle. And in the middle of it all were two women, a distraught, almost catatonic Amanda Sue Barker, and her mother, Lesley. For the detectives, the first few hours were a confusing blur. They had a victim and two people who were there when it happened. Standard procedure kicked in. They separated Lesley and Amanda for questioning. Amanda, in her state of shock and given her cognitive challenges, was difficult to interview. Her story was likely disjointed and confused. But then, the case took a sharp, sudden turn. In a quiet interrogation room, Lesley Barker did the unthinkable. She confessed. Calmly, she told detectives that she was the one who had killed Kara Lorden. She spun a story, claiming she had gotten into a heated argument with Kara and that in a moment of rage, she'd grabbed a knife to end the argument. She took full responsibility, carefully leaving her daughter out of the narrative entirely. To the investigators, it felt like a breakthrough. A confession is the gold standard. Here was the perpetrator, admitting to the crime. While the motive seemed a little thin, a mother killing her daughter's teenage roommate over a fight, it wasn't impossible. People kill for less. With a signed confession, the wheels of justice started turning, the focus shifted from Amanda, and the full weight of the law came down on Lesley Barker. The first part of her desperate plan had worked. Section 4. A mother's plea. With a signed confession from Lesley, the justice system moved fast. Too fast. She was charged with the murder of Kara Lorden, and the city of Toledo heard the shocking story of a mother who snapped. Behind the scenes, Lesley's lawyer likely told her the grim truth. A murder conviction meant life, a sentence that would see her die behind bars. Faced with that terrifying reality, Lesley made another calculated choice. Instead of risking a trial, she took a plea deal. In exchange for her guilty plea, the prosecution offered a reduced charge, involuntary manslaughter. It still meant a long time in prison, 10 to 25 years, but it wasn't a life sentence. In court, Lesley Barker stood before the judge and sealed her own fate. She chose the cold silence of a prison cell to hide the truth of her daughter's actions. To the court, the public, and Kara Lorden's grieving family, the case was closed. Justice, it appeared, had been served. As Lesley was taken away to begin her sentence, she must have believed her secret was safe, buried under the weight of her lie. And for a while, it was. Section 5. The twist, a lie, unravels. Lesley was locked away, and the world believed the case was closed. But it wasn't. Back in Toledo, some of the investigators just couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The forensic evidence didn't quite match Lesley's story. The wound patterns and signs of a struggle seemed more consistent with a younger, more frenzied attacker, not a middle-aged woman. Whispers from neighbors who heard the argument also started to poke holes in Lesley's confession. The puzzle pieces just weren't fitting together. Those whispers grew louder. Investigators decided to take a second look. They revisited the evidence and started scrutinizing Amanda Sue Barker more closely. Away from her mother's powerful influence, the inconsistencies in Amanda's story began to show. The weight of her guilt was becoming too much to bear. Finally, the dam of secrecy broke. Confronted with the evidence that pointed directly at her, Amanda confessed everything. She admitted that she, not her mother, had wielded the knife. She recounted the argument, the jealousy, and the brutal attack on Kara. The confession sent shockwaves through the justice system. It meant the wrong person was in prison. When she learned her daughter had confessed, Lesley recanted her own story. "I lied for my daughter," she admitted, finally telling the truth about what she'd found that day. The entire case was turned on its head. The story was no longer about a mother who killed, but about a mother who had gone to unimaginable lengths to cover for one. Section 6. The Aftermath and the Price of a Lie. This bombshell confession threw the entire legal system into chaos. The case against Lesley for the murder itself collapsed. The focus now shifted entirely to Amanda Sue Barker, the person who had actually committed the crime. Faced with the evidence and her own admission, Amanda pleaded guilty to the murder of Kara Lorden. She was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 15 years. At her sentencing, the judge noted the profound, if deeply misguided, motivation behind her mother's lie, even calling it an ultimate act of love. But he also stressed that the truth mattered and that Kara Lorden's killer had to be held accountable. So, what happened to Lesley? While cleared of murder, she had still lied to police and obstructed a homicide investigation. The courts, however, showed a degree of leniency, likely recognizing the extraordinary circumstances. After serving about 5 years of her original sentence, Lesley was granted an early release on what's known as shock probation in 2004. She was free, but her sacrifice hadn't saved her daughter. It had only delayed the inevitable. In 2015, after serving 15 years, Amanda Sue Barker was granted parole and released from prison. Both mother and daughter were free, but the ghost of 1999 would forever linger between them. A permanent shadow cast by a desperate lie and a brutal truth. The choices made in this story are incredibly complex, resting in a deep, moral gray area. What do you think? Was Lesley's lie an unforgivable crime that obstructed justice, or was it the ultimate act of a mother's love? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you find these explorations into the complexities of human nature compelling, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss our next story. In the end, the story of Lesley and Amanda Barker is a profound tragedy about the fierce, primal, and sometimes dangerous depths of a mother's love. Lesley was willing to sacrifice everything, her freedom, her name, her future, out of a desperate, instinctual need to protect her child. Yet, in doing so, she only delayed justice for Kara Lorden and couldn't ultimately save her daughter from facing the consequences. This case forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about love, loyalty, and the law. It shows that the road to ruin is often paved with good intentions. A mother's love is meant to be a shield, but when does that shield become a shroud, hiding a terrible truth? It leaves us with one final haunting question. Is there any limit to what a parent would or should do for their child?